So Ronit, welcome to this debriefing session, and congratulations on scoring a 720. How does it feel?
Thank you, Rajat. Feels amazing. Every penny, every effort has made it count. I feel amazing.
Okay. So what was your quant and
Absolutely.
verbal split this time, and what was it? I know you've taken the GMAT once before, so.
Uh, I took GMAT once in August 2019. The split was Q46 and V35.
Okay.
And the second time I took it a month back, the split was Q50 V38.
Okay. So good improvement in both quant and verbal. So let's just talk about both your journey. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Somehow I always scored decently well in quants, even in the even when I gave the last GMAT. In all the mocks I scored Q48, 49, 50, but somehow in the real GMAT I panicked and got a Q56.
46.
Yeah,
46. Yes. Yes.
terrible score.
It's not terrible, but yes, it's not where you
It is. It
should
is
be.
for quants. It is. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about this. So you've had this journey where you've prepared for the GMAT twice, and both times you've done it with e-GMAT. So let's talk about your first attempt. Prior to, so did you only prepare with e-GMAT during your first attempt, or did you try books first and then went to?
No. I am not a books person, and I think that was the first point why I chose e-GMAT. I filtered it on the online courses. I only wanted to do the online tutorial thing, and I found about e-GMAT, tried it once, the 1 month trial, and I absolutely loved it. Uh, and I used GMAT Club for the question repository. But
Got it.
again, GMAT Club is a great repository, obviously, but it has its own problems. You don't get to learn the process as efficiently as e-GMAT does, obviously, because it has the step-by-step procedure. The practice files, the application files have their importance. There's a reason why they are there. So yes, sentence correction and critical reasoning. I don't think any book can do a job as well as e-GMAT has done. I had no idea about sentence correction, CR, what sections were supposed to be in GMAT, and I prepared absolutely from scratch, only through e-GMAT.
Okay, and so as someone who I've gone through your course, you've done it reasonably well, quite well, is what I would say. Um, and so when you took your first attempt, what was your approach to solving verbal questions, and how did this change in your second attempt?
Correct. So I think the process changed. I tell you, I noticed this the second time I gave GMAT. That GMAT is a very smart exam. Not about the questions, not about anything else. It makes sure that you understand the process. If you have a decent enough score, it means you have gone through the process of the GMAT well. You cannot uh, probably you cannot get a 720, 730, 740 if you don't understand the meaning and sentence correction, or if you don't approach critical reasoning in a certain way. There are certain there are certain process which is important to for differentiating between a 660 and a 720. Uh, Now, for the second time, I took Scholaranium, the GMAT Scholaranium. I think that that made a huge difference. In fact, I took the e-GMAT Scholaranium only 21 days ago.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. It's like you took 1 month
Yeah.
subscription for the second time, and and
Yes,
and
yes,
you that
yes.
was enough for you because you already had that foundation.
I mentioned it before, but this had to be my last attempt, and I wanted to give in everything I could. I've already invested enough, but I did not hesitate to because I've heard a lot about Scholaranium, and I went for it, and the
So how did
and
Scholaranium? So Scholaranium, let me just explain for others. I think for you also, we don't do a good job. Scholaranium is composed of two words: scholar and cranium. Cranium is your brain. Scholar is you as an individual. So it's supposed to make you smarter. So how did it help you? And you've talked about Scholaranium because you already had the right foundation. You started with the V35. You got that with the first time you subscribed. You improved that to V35, which is 74th or 74th, 75th percentile or so. So how did Scholaranium help you get to that 85th percentile?
Before I start with Scholaranium, I was in conversation with one of the e-GMAT members, and he told me specifically to have this step-by-step approach when I go to Scholaranium. And so when you attempt a particular quiz, say custom quiz, now Scholaranium has this thing called custom quiz, which lets you focus on the part where you're weak at. Now, a part where you're weak at can mean two things. One, your accuracy is not decent enough in that particular section. And the second, you're taking a longer time than you ideally should in that particular section. And for me, it was pretty evident. I was terrible in critical reasoning. I was scoring a good 80, 85, 75 percent accuracy in sentence correction and reading comprehension board, but a 30, 50, 55, 60% accuracy in critical reasoning. And so Scholaranium, again, Scholaranium does two things majorly. One, I told you, it lets you have this custom quizzes, ability quizzes. Two, I think the more important one, it lets you log the errors beautifully. Now, both the things combined, Scholaranium and the e-GMAT guidance, worked massively for me. They had this step-by-step thing. Now, it might have made a difference to me personally because I am a person who needs this step-by-step thing. Do step 1, do step 2, do step 3, you will find your result.
You spoke with Archit. I'm looking at your emails right now.
Yes. Okay. I spoke with Archit, and he gave me the step-by-step guideline. Try the Scholaranium thing. Try one SC quiz, one CR quiz, one RC quiz. And if you get this accuracy, do this. If you get a accuracy below this, do this. They had this absolutely flow chart lined up for me. I did not have to waste my time. Also, I realized this also. A month back, I was wasting time. Now, again, as I mentioned, GMAT Club, it's a great repository and everything. I gave around 70 to 80 hours practicing questions. But again, to know process, to know result.
The solutions weren't there. The accuracy aggregation wasn't there.
Yes. Even if the solutions were there, I wasn't able to log them properly. I wasn't able to come back to them as efficiently as I could in Scholaranium. Scholaranium, there's a particular section you could make notes, you could bookmark them, and the answers are beautifully laid down. Even if you have a doubt in particular question, the expert analysis is way more efficient. So again, Scholaranium did two things to me. The custom quizzes were absolutely brilliant. In fact, in my actual GMAT, I scored 83% in CR, which is the highest in all three sections. Yeah, miracle.
That is incredible improvement, by the way.
Incredible. I saw my ESR and I did not believe it for a second. I scored 83% in CR. I was right at 40 to 50% accuracy in CR. But I think, and again, so what Scholaranium does is, if you do not score decently enough, say in particular section, I talk about me personally, I do not score well in CR, say 50%. Scholaranium says that go back to the application files, do them, revise them enough times, as much as you want, and then come back. If you hit your accuracy level, good enough. If you don't, go back. And that is how the whole structure is layered out. Eventually what happens is the process gets in your head. Again, you don't need to do a lot of questions, but spend enough time on each question to make sure that you get the process.
You don't repeat the mistake.
You don't repeat the mistake, and you know what you're doing. Say suppose, now I only know this because I have proceeded with e-GMAT, that whenever I see a CR question, I have to pre-think. I don't know what other people, what strategies other people use, but I know that once I see a CR question, I have to pre-think. Now, I did not. A month back to the actual GMAT exam, I did not. I spent around 1.5 minutes reading the question, trying to pre-think, and eventually I figured out. No, let's go to the answer choices and then I'll filter them out. It is very important to stick to the process. If you waste 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes, 4 minutes in practice, do it. It doesn't matter. Eventually, you will get to the process. Eventually, what will happen is you'll pre-think in 1.5 minutes and you'll eliminate the answer choices in the next 20 seconds. So you'll save the time anyway. Just be honest
So I
with the
want to ask you
process.
this one question. So when you say during practice, spend those 3.5, 4 minutes, what, and you went from those spending those 3.5, 4 minutes to actually getting down to that 90 seconds to be able to pre-think. What do you think transpired between that time when you were spending 4 minutes to you being coming down to those 90 seconds? I mean, how did that transformation happen for you?
Again, just trust the process. When you go through the when you go through the practice files, when you go through the application file, you analyze each and every mistake, analyze and note down each mistake and come back to it. So what I followed is I practiced for 5 to 6 days, and whatever mistakes I logged in for those 5 to 6 days, I revised it on the seventh day. I revised it every other while. So what happens is you tend to go back, you analyze your mistakes, and then somehow the process gets in. For example, when I saw some bold-faced question, somewhere I gave up already, even before reading the question, because I had it in mind. I'll not be able to pre-think. I'll not be able to derive. I'll not be able to arrive at a conclusion. But then I attempted 10 questions. I had a terrible accuracy. Came back to it. Knew what my mistakes were. Knew what the process was. Identified the conclusion. Know what the first board phase is playing. Know what the second board phase is playing. Correlated with the conclusion. Now this process gets in your head. If it doesn't get to your head in the first 10 question, it will if you come back, analyze it, and do it again. It might happen that you will get a terrible accuracy in the second attempt too. But just trust the process. Just know what is the procedure you have to deploy. You have to identify the conclusion. You have to know what the first board phase is playing. Just know the process. And eventually, after practicing, after spending 3 to 4 minutes, say on 10, 12, 20, 40, 50 questions, you get at a point where the conclusion will be evident to you, where you will know.
I think I want to just add a couple of things to it. It's a really great thing over here. And because there'll be others who will be watching, the key to doing this is not just solving questions blindly, but spending that time for review after the first 10 questions, spending that time for review.
Absolutely. So again, this was one of the suggestions given by Archit, that not only note down the question you answered incorrectly, but also where you spend those 3.5 minutes, 4 minutes. And why did you? Tell me if you were confused in two options. Because being confused in two options has not to be taken lightly. It means that there is an application gap. Go back to that application file. If it is happening frequently, go back to that application file. You'll realize that there is one thing that separates that correct answer choice from the incorrect one. So noting down these questions where you're spending ideally more time than what you should is as important as logging down those incorrect questions. Incorrect questions, it is easier. I'll say it is easier to rectify. But those bringing down those 3.5, 4 minutes to 2 minutes is as important, or probably more important.
It requires more analysis.
It requires
to identify why that happened. Because when you made a mistake, you can really say, okay, I made a mistake here.
Correct,
and identifying that mistake is easier. But
correct.
Also from a mental standpoint, we as humans don't tend to look at questions that we solved correctly, even though we may have taken longer. To really say, I should spend time on critically analyzing this. There's that mental willingness that needs to be there.
Yes. And now I knew that I had to follow a process. I'll follow a process. If it gets me result, good enough. If it doesn't, okay. But I need to follow process if this is the thing that even after spending 3.5, 4 minutes, I have to go back. I have to analyze it. I have to note down how I faltered in applying the process. I'll do it, and I rigorously noted down everything, even on the online portal thing, the notes thing, and even in my notebook. this is why I faltered out. This is why, and I came back to it every 2 to 3 days, and that is how the process eventually getting started. Started getting into my head, and the 4.5, 3.5, 4 minutes came down to 1.5, 2 minutes.
Got it. Okay. I am glad that you stuck out with this. And the fact that you're an entrepreneur, I think it just shows you need that mental toughness to get to, to get the job done. Okay. So let's talk about your next step. We've talked about the GMAT. Let's talk about what you want to do next. Now you are in your own family business. You're based in Jodhpur. You are in Jodhpur right now. You graduated last year. Overall, and for you, your goal really is to work in the family business for another year and a half and then go for your MBA.
Correct.
I would say it probably will have to be a year or 2 years, given the fact that we are in September. So
Yes.
well,
Yes,
year and a
yes.
half, because if you apply, you're going to be applying next year, right? Is what I'm assuming.
Next year, I'll be applying next year.
You'll be
Absolutely.
applying. So it'll be 3 years by the time most likely when you join.
Mhm.
So your questions really were, okay, your business and your primary purpose of doing an MBA is you want to really say, okay, you have run a 50% company right now. How can you expand that to a 500, 5,000 person company? How the management challenges seem daunting, not yeah.
Correct. And somehow I can do it in say 10 years, but I want to know how I can do it in the next 5 to 6 years. The efficiency part I want to get in.
I don't think it's just the efficiency. It's also about setting those processes, and processes that work for, I mean,
Correct.
we see the same thing. Processes that work for 10 people don't work for 30. For what worked for 30 people don't work for 50 or 100. So you also have to mature those processes, and overall the pace at which change happens also needs to change. Overall, there's a lot more inertia built into the system, but there's a lot more pace also once you overcome that inertia. So I think both things happen simultaneously when that happens. So the two questions, I think the three questions that you had were, okay, what kind of school should you choose? And the second thing would be, how should you position your the fact that you're working
Your
in a family business? How can you position your experience to because it's not a corporate experience. So I think, given what you want to achieve, and I'm going to just say the only path forward for you is to come back to your family business. That's your primary goal.
that is my plan.
So in that case, you want to make sure that you get into operations. Okay.
I do.
Okay. So in that case, in terms of the kind of schools you should go to, or the kind of companies that you should be employed in are either your consumer good companies where you have thousands of employees, or companies such as Walmart and Amazon, and I think those are companies where operations start to become a big part. Where in your case, your kind of business, it's you're not building products, you're expanding services.
Correct.
So
Correct.
so
Correct.
so service businesses where such as technology services could be one thing, but I don't know in your case how much of knowledge management do you need to do, but it's primarily more, it seems more similar to retail services than technology services, unless I'm wrong.
Yes. 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 I think both are equally important. Even I need to have the technical knowledge, and I think for that, my primary goal is to work for a company which deals in the exactly same custom clearance, but a huge corporate, because technical knowledge is as important as managing this whole supply chain, the whole
So I
service.
frankly would really recommend that you work in, not in a company that does this, because here is something what's going to happen. If you work, the worst way to compete with an incumbent is to do the same thing. There's a reason why AMD has not been able to overcome Intel.
Correct. Correct.
Right.
Correct. Correct.
It's
Correct.
just by doing the same thing you can't, unless and until it's a hugely growing market,
Correct. Correct. Correct.
right?
Exception.
Yeah. So those are not exceptions, but if it's a hugely growing market, then you can really compete where the incumbent doesn't have the ability to satisfy the
Correct.
demand,
I get it.
which was the case with, if you think about Wipro and TCS and Infosys, all existing in the same industry, even though TCS had a head start, because the market was so
But they
huge,
had
and
this.
and the TCS couldn't satisfy the demands.
Correct. Correct.
But in your
True.
case, I think for you, it's really important. The right way to compete is not to compete on the same metrics.
Okay.
And
Makes
that's
sense.
where I think you need to learn operations from more around retail or tech operations,
Makes
depending on what
sense.
makes more sense, but not in the same industry. Otherwise, you won't be able to compete.
Correct. Makes sense. Makes
So,
sense.
because an incumbent would always have more reach, more power, better operations. You can't set up their operations better than they have set up their operation in the
Absolutely.
same way.
Absolutely.
So when it comes to business schools, I would recommend. So I strongly recommend India for the very fact that, I mean, for you, it's lots of places open up, but in selective portions of those. So in India, I'd recommend ISB and IIMs just because there's a lot of retail stuff going on in India. And being an Indian in India, you don't have to worry about visa issues. You don't have to worry about any of those. You
Correct.
can pick and
Correct.
choose which companies you apply to, as
Correct.
long as you
Correct.
go to a
Correct.
top school. So that's why I like India. Okay. And specifically because you want to come back and work in Indian context. Okay.
Anything apart from ISP? I am obviously targeting ISP, but for the IMs and everything, I'll have to
Not
give CAT,
executive to the executive part.
not executive.
Okay. So that's something that I would recommend.
Okay.
Then I would also recommend schools such as Ross, and where Amazon's a big employer. So
Okay.
in the US, so I would recommend those kind of schools. Similarly, in the UK, Unilever, Procter and Gamble. So again, top schools, Unilever and P&G. So
Okay.
where FMCG
Okay.
companies hire from. So they're both UK based. So I think Johnson and Johnson and on all of these companies.
All right. All right. All
Now,
right.
one of the other interesting places for you would be Singapore, because Singapore has a lot of port clearance and custom clearance. Now, it's not the same thing as this. The laws are not as complex as they are in India, but you're talking about larger companies over there, so much larger companies.
Correct. Correct. Correct.
So that's, I think,
Absolutely.
for me, when I look at that, that's another good place to be in.
All right.
So
Also, does it mean when you go study in Singapore, you should look for jobs in Singapore?
yes, the idea really
Okay.
is the reason why you go and study somewhere is you could go look for jobs locally.
All right. All right.
So that's why, I mean, a place such as Ross would be very useful because Amazon is the largest employer at Ross.
All
A
right.
bunch of
All right.
places where Amazon hires from or where Walmart hires from. So,
Makes sense.
so that's kind of what my thought process would be for this. So that's how I would go about choosing schools. Let's say which companies would give me that kind of experience, which schools give me the kind of, so even with that kind of experience, you have to filter it out to really say, okay, where do these companies hire from overall? So that gets you the filter.
All right.
And looking at what you want to do, it's operations where I think more than finance that you care about, given who you are. So that's how I would filter it out.
All right.
So, and so I'll look at the potential employers, then narrow down the schools,
All
the
right. All right.
likelihood part over there. Now, with regards to how you should position your family business, right? I think the key thing over there is, and especially with family business, there are a few metrics that you would look at. What innovations did you bring about in your processes where you
All
were
right.
there? What challenges and innovations would always come from challenges that you face and how you overcame those
Correct.
challenges.
Correct.
So that's one area. The second thing would be the recommendations, validation for those innovations, because the biggest struggle is validation. Why? Because if you are the owner of a business,
Absolutely.
you
How
have
do I get the validation?
how do you get the validation? And which is where your customers, your long-term customers would really be a really good means to validate that, good recommender as well. So if you have a relatively known customer who can really vouch for how you brought about changes in the processes and how those changes help them do their business better. So what business schools are looking to really say is this someone who is really going to come and learn and implement those changes back in his or her business? Or is there someone who's kind of, is this someone who has a family business to bank upon and is doing an MBA because his parents are saying, hey man, go do an MBA, at least.
Correct.
And so I think
Correct.
if you are an action agent and if there's proof that you're going to take action, then a B school would say, okay, let's empower him so that he can amplify what he learns at the business school. So for
Totally
that,
makes
you've
sense.
got to really give prior evidence of those actions that you've taken. So
That is one of the major challenges, because I do not have many reputed clients who can vouch for me. Also, I've been working for a year. I'll work for another, say, 1 year, a couple of years. I don't know how to play that card, how to make them vouch for me, how to.
well, I mean, if you've brought about changes, so they won't vouch for you for really saying, okay, you were doing your job well, but the processes are well defined. It says that no one. So if you're a diligent individual, that's not so interesting.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right, I get it. Yeah.
What's more interesting is what change did you bring about, and how did that change help you?
Absolutely.
I mean, think about this in the GMAT preparation, right? You mentioned GMAT Club is a source of a ton of questions, but the analytics don't exist. The good solutions don't exist. You can't make those kind of notes over there the way you can, so as an individual, the benefit to you is not complete. There is partial benefit, but it's not to the same extent. So in the same way, clients who were being serviced by the same company, they were getting a benefit. That's why they came to you. They paid the fees. But now that benefit has been enhanced.
Correct.
Okay, has been improved upon. And that is what, and it's because of some of the actions that you took.
The process has been simplified.
Yeah, that could be one of the ways. The process has been simplified. It's been fewer days, or you can now, rather than going, you've you've been able to cut through the red tape, take on more complexity at your end, or standardize the processes. So, howsoever you've done it, it's been, you brought about
Makes
a certain
sense.
change.
Completely get it. Yeah.
So it's very similar to, think of business school selection is very similar to selection for IPL. They don't expect you to be a finished product, but they expect you to have enough explosive power that they can train you
All right.
to be someone who can make an impact.
Who can finish probably 5 years down the line. Yeah.
Yes. So that's kind of what they look for.
Makes sense.
Okay. Similarly, so that's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is to really say, hey, were you able to do certain negotiations to get more value out of your clients by doing some things? So are you a good negotiator?
All right.
Okay. Those are, no, that's what you have to prove.
Yes. I get it.
So
what differentiates me? How?
Yeah, it's again, not just someone who does a list of things given to him, but someone who can make a difference, and one of the ways to make a difference is by negotiating.
Correct.
Okay. So yeah, that's kind of how you'd go about doing this.
All right.
Any other question that I can answer?
I think these were the major two questions.
Okay.
I obviously need to research more, but I have a decent enough idea how to go about it. I know how to start the procedure.
Okay, that sounds great. So yeah, Ronit, then thank you very much for joining me today. One thing that I would really say is, Archit will reach out for a review. So if you can provide a review on GMAT Club, that'd be great. If you've not done that already.
I will. I have it. I do it.
All right, perfect. Thank you for trusting e-GMAT, and good luck, and keep me updated as to what you do. Absolutely. I know you'll be doing it a year down the line. Just drop me an email saying, hey, this is what I decided. These are the schools that I'm looking forward to applying to. And essentially, we do send emails. We actually, just today we had a webinar where we hosted one of the admission directors from IESC.
Okay.
So we will be hosting admission director from various schools.
All right.
So keep on attending those webinars.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye, Ronit. Good luck.
Bye, Raja. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for being a student.